Look at the Sichas volume 20, the Sicha for Chanukah. So the Sichas are like a pilpul, a legal halachic analysis. We know by Chanukah we find something interesting and possibly unique, that it has not one level or two levels of the mitzvah, but actually three. There's the basic, there's the higher standard, and the highest standard. And this is from a brisa, which is the equivalent of like a Mishnah, the statement of the Tanoim, the original Tanoim. And it says that the basic mitzvah is one candle per household, period. One candle per household. You can have 10 people in the house, it doesn't matter. It could be the 5th night, the 8th night. One candle per household every night. The higher standard is one candle per member of the household. So every night of Chanukah, if there's 5 people in the house, I light 5 candles. There's 10 people in the house, I light 10 candles. Then there's the highest standard, which is called Mahadrin Min HaMahadrin, which the Rabbi points out on other sichas, which is relatively unique, that there should be a higher than high standard. And this became the mainstream custom, which shows the dedication that we had in Chanukah and the tremendous miracle Hashem made. There's no limitations. We're not doing good. We're not doing better. We're doing best. And here, what is the highest standard? That you actually fluctuate the number. You either go from 8 all the way down to 1 based on the days, according to Beis Shammai, or you go from 1 all the way to 8 according to Beis Hillel, which of course is the halacha that we go by Beis Hillel, and we go from 1 to 8. And again, this has become the mainstream custom. But the background is that these are the 3 standards: basic, higher, and highest. So in the Gemara, the Talmud, the Amoraim, the later comment sages, as opposed to the Tanoim who wrote the Baraisa, they discuss the reason for this dispute of Shammai, Beis Shammai, and Beis Hillel. Why does Beis Shammai say go from 8 to 1? Beis Hillel says go from 1 to 8. So there's 2 approaches to this dispute. Approach A is you go by the incoming days or the outgoing days. Beis Shammai says you light as many days as is still coming. On the first day, there's 8 days left. On the second day, there's 7 days coming. The third day, there's 6 days coming. That's how many days you should light, how many candles you should light. Whereas Beis Hillel says, no, go by the outgoing days. On day 1, you have 1 day gone. Day 2, you have 2 days. Day 3, 3 days under your belt. And that's how you do it. And this is related to other sichas. The Rabbi discussed that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, the approach is that Beis Shammai always goes by potential. Beis Hillel goes by actual, which is more important to discuss and to celebrate. And if you go by potential, you start with 8, you go down to 1. You go by actual, you go by how many days we actually already have. But this is approach A, that the reason for the dispute has to do with the days. You're counting the days. You're either counting down, you're counting up, but you're counting the days. Approach B says it has nothing to do with the days. It has nothing to do with the days. It has nothing to do with Chanukah. We find in other areas in Judaism the concept of either going down or going up. We find the concept of going down by the oxen of Sukkot. This is a biblical thing in the Torah. They have to bring 70 oxen throughout the holiday of Sukkot, the 7 days to honor, to bless, to pray for the 70 nations. And the way it worked was that on the first day, they'd bring 13 oxen, and then 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7 for a grand total of 70. So we find the concept in Torah and in, I guess, in holiday observance. There's a concept of going from top down. We don't find anywhere in a biblical thing a concept of going up. There isn't such a thing that, day 1 you should bring 1 sacrifice, and day 2, 2 sacrifices. No. First day of Pesach you should eat 1 matzah, and the second day 2 matzahs, the third day 3. There isn't such a concept. The only place in Torah, in terms biblically, where you find a mitzvah, where you actually fluctuate the number, is by Sukkot, and the number goes down. And therefore, if we're looking to fluctuate numbers, we should go down. Whereas the approach of Beis Hillel would be that there's a general principle, Mailin b'kodesh ve'ein meridin. In any area of holiness, you should always ascend and not descend. Always go up. And there are many places in halacha where you find the concept that you should always increase in holiness and not decrease. It's a general principle. So these are the 2 approaches to the Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argument. So the Rebbe is going to analyze what's the difference between these two approaches. These two approaches nominally are theoretical. The practical is very clear. Shammai says you go down, Hillel says you go up. Let's focus on Hillel because that's the halacha, just to make it simpler. Bottom line is the halacha is we go by Beis Hillel. Everybody knows that how do you do Chanukah? From 1 to 8. So just to make it easier to follow, let's put Beis Shammai on the side. We want to understand, we want to analyze what is the reason why Chanukah we go up from 1 to 8. We don't just light one candle every night or whatever. So either one approach is that we go by the outgoing days, we're counting the days, and one approach is that we have a principle of ascending in holiness. I'm bolding, these are going to be the focus of our analysis. Why does Hillel say you go from 1 to 8 and not just stay stagnant? Either you're counting the days or you're ascending in holiness. So the Rebbe says not only is this a theoretical argument, but we know in Torah it's always more interesting when you find a practical relevance in a theoretical debate, because then it makes the difference more clear, more crystallized. And the Rebbe says you can find a number of halachic applications between approach A and B. So here goes. It says halachic application number 1. Standard number 3, the highest standard, is that on top of 2 or on top of 1? How does this work? Do we have the basic mitzvah of 1 and then we add on to it number 3, or we have basic mitzvah of 1 and then 2 and then we add number 3? And this is a classic debate between Rambam and Tosfos, two Rishonim early commentaries, because there's two ways to look at this brisa, at this statement of the sages. One is, well, the basic mitzvah is 1 per household. A higher standard is 1 per person. A highest standard is don't do 1 per person. Do 1 per household and then increase every night. That would be that you do 1 and then you add number 3. The basic mitzvah is 1, and one way of improving it is to make 2 on top of 1 or 3 on top of 1, but not both. The other approach would be no. Your basic mitzvah is 1 per household. Then you say 1 per person. So if there's 5 people in the household, you got 5 candles on night 1. And the higher way is that those 5 candles on night 1 will now increase every night, because we go from 1 to 8. So the second night, we're going to light 10 candles in that house, 2 for every person. And the third night, we're going to light 3 for every person, etc. Until on the 8th night, we're going to have 40 candles because we've got 5 people. So this becomes a debate between Rambam and Tosfos, two Rishonim, that this is standard 3 on top of 1 or standard 3 building actually on top of 2. This is a classic debate in Rishonim. Says the Rebbe that it would be arguable to say that this could be the practical difference between approach A and approach B, and the reason of Beis Hillel saying that you should ascend in holy, that you should add each day, if you're supposed to add each day, because you're counting the days, approach A. So if you have 5 people in the house, on the 8th day, you don't want to have 40 candles because you won't be able to tell which day it is. The whole idea of adding is to be able to announce to your family and to the world, aha, today's the 8th day. We're celebrating Hashem's miracle. Not 1, but 8. But if I look, I see 40 candles. I have no clue what day it is. And therefore, according to this approach A, that we're adding each day is in order to count the days and to count the miracle. So then you would go according to the approach of the Tosfos, that standard 3 is adding to standard 1, and on day 8, you'll simply light 8 candles in the house. But according to approach B, that this has nothing to do with how many days of Chanukah passed, but rather, why does Beis Hillel say to keep adding? Because you're always supposed to add in holiness. Aha! So it's not about how many days. So if day 1, there's 5 people in the house, you light 5. Day 2, you light 10. Day 8, you light 40. What's the downside? And now you accomplished all 3 levels together, one on top of the other, and there's 40 candles. The fact that you don't know what day it is, What does it have to do with the days? According to approach B, it's just a principle in general that you're supposed to ascend in holiness. So this is one difference, halachic application. Then the Rebbe suggests another halachic application. Between these two approaches. Let's suppose a person lit one candle on night 2. For whatever reason, either they forgot or they didn't have sufficient oil or candles. Bottom line is it was night 2, and they lit 2 candles. Now it's night 3, and now they have sufficient, and they want to light 3. So according to approach A, you light 3. It's the third night, you light 3. But according to approach B, that the whole reason to light additional is because you're supposed to ascend in holiness. Why do I need to light 3? Yesterday I lit 2. I'm sorry, yesterday I lit 1. Right? What did he do on night 2? He lit 1. So on night 3, you light 2, and you increased in holiness. There's no value in jumping from 1 to 3, according to approach B, because this has nothing to do with corresponding the days of Chanukah to your numbers of your candles. It has to do with the simple principle, you should always increase, so increase. So that would be halachic application number 2. Somebody might say, who cares? Why not? Do more. Let's assume there's poverty. Let's assume you need to, and halacha could always debate in theory. This is strange to us because we always think of Chanukah, that you're adding the candles because of the days. Our natural inclination is to think approach A. Why do you add candles? Because of the days. But the Talmud has a whole other approach that has nothing to do with the days. It has to do with the concept of Mailim B'Kodesh that you're always supposed to add. So if I lit on day 2, I lit 1 candle. On day 3, I have to increase. I light 2 candles. Why should I light 3? It's Baltashka. There's a waste. There's no value to it. There's no mitzvah value to it, according to approach B. Halachic application number 3. What happened if night 3, I had oil for 2 candles? The first 2 nights I did normal. First night I lit 1, the second night I lit 2, and now it's the third night. I'm supposed to light 3. However, I check my cupboard, and I only have enough oil or enough candles for 2. What do I do now? So according to approach B, where I'm supposed to increase and not decrease, supposed to go up and never down, I should at least light 2, because at least I will not go down. I'm not able to increase. I can't go from 2 to 3 because I don't have enough, but at least I can maintain the 2. So I'm still observing, if you will, part of that principle. I'm not ascending, but I'm not descending. Night 2, I lit 2. Night 3, at least I'll maintain the 2, because that's all I've got. But if the approach is approach A, that why do you light an additional candle? Because you're counting the days. It's day 3. You only have 2 candles. Lighting 2 is not going to help you. That's not going to count the days. It has no value. In fact, it's confusing. It's misleading. Somebody walks by and sees in your house 2 candles, they're going to think, oh, maybe I have my days wrong. And therefore, the principle would be then, in that case, that strange scenario, you would light 1 on day 2. So we have already 3 halachic application differences between these 2 approaches. And then the Rebbe digs deeper. The Rebbe says, let's look deeper. Deeper meaning not just a halachic application, but a principle difference in approach. The Rebbe now is going to open up a new window and say, let's discuss the 2 approaches in a general perspective, which, as we will see, will also then have halachic ramifications. But to do this, the Rebbe opens up a separate discussion. And let's discuss the separate discussion as separate and apart from Chanukah for a minute, the first half of the screen. And that is, we know in the concept of Hidur Mitzvah, the concept that mitzvahs have improved forms of performance, right? Almost every mitzvah, you could do the mitzvah and you can do it better. I can have a basic mezuzah, I can have a nice mezuzah, I can have a basic lulav and esrog set, I can have a nice one. The same thing with tefillin and talis. I mean, and there are many concepts like that. It's called hidur mitzvah. Do the mitzvah beautiful, make it better. So it's known there's two types though of hidur mitzvah. They're not all created equal. Some hidur mitzvah is an actual improvement in the mitzvah. Some hidur mitzvah is an improvement in the person's behavior in that mitzvah. And they're not the same. Sometimes in halacha, it tells you, I want you to do this mitzvah this way. And if you do it, the language is mitzvah minha mufchar. You've done the mitzvah optimally. But sometimes the language in halacha is that if you do it this way, you did the mitzvah mahadrin. You beautified it. And the Rebbe maintains in a footnote, the Rebbe wants to argue, which is very broad. You have to know the entire Judaism to make such a statement, that this language indicates what type of hidur is it? What type of improvement is this particular improvement? When the halachic poskim and the decisors, etc., use the term that doing it in this way is mitzvah min hamufchar, it's a better mitzvah. That means the actual mitzvah is better. When it uses the word mahadrin, it doesn't mean the mitzvah is better. The mitzvah is standard. But you have shown more alacrity. You, the observer, the way I chose to write the words, the first approach is that the mitzvah that's being observed is improved. And the second approach is the mitzvah observer, the person, is improving his behavior in the mitzvah. You know, I can get a nicer pair of tefillin. Clearly, it's a nicer tefillin. Or I can be very careful when I'm wearing my tefillin not to speak. That's not improving the mitzvah of tefillin. That's improving my behavior with tefillin. Just thought of that difference, right? I can have a nicer pair of tefillin. Clearly, it's nicer. Or I could have a nicer behavior when I'm wearing my tefillin. And some people do that. They don't say a word while they're wearing tefillin. Clearly, that's a hidur. That's a beautiful way of doing the mitzvah. But that's not a better tefillin. That's a better Jew doing tefillin. The halachic or lumdisha or the scholarly language that's used is in the parentheses, chefza versus gavra. There are many such debates as Aramaic words, chefza and gavra. Chefza means the object of the mitzvah is better. Gavra means the person doing the mitzvah is shining, is behaving better. And there are many areas in halacha where we discuss, is this chefza, is it gavra? And I just gave you an example of a nicer tefillin or nicer behavior while wearing tefillin. And the Rebbe maintains that that language will match up with those terms on line 2 on the screen. Either it says mitzvah min hamufchar, that means an actual better mitzvah, or mahadrin means you are behaving in a more beautified way in terms of your behavior when you're doing this mitzvah. But it's a gavra, it's on you. It's not actually a better mitzvah. And the understanding is that if it's an actual betterment in the mitzvah, if I have two things that are contradicting, two values, one is an actual betterment in the mitzvah, and one is just a betterment in the person's approach to the mitzvah, the former will trump the latter, because this is an actual betterment in the mitzvah. Whereas the other is just a betterment in your behavior. So I'm putting down some examples from other sikhs that we've learned. This is not brought in this sikh, but I'm just putting it as an example. There's a concept by the mitzvah of lulav. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch that you should check the lulav inside the sukkah. It's from the Arizal, and the Alter Rebbe brings it. And the Rebbe discusses that this is an actual betterment in the mitzvah. And he proves it because the Alter Rebbe uses the language mitzvah min hamufchar. The Alter Rebbe doesn't say, shake the lulav wherever you want, but if you want to be muhudar, if you want to be nice and special, do it in the sukkah. He says, no, mitzvah min hamufchar. So clearly that's an actual betterment in the mitzvah of lulav. It's not just showing an alacrity or a diligence or a holiness on you, the person. It's actually a better lulav mitzvah, which is discussed in other sikhs, because what's the connection between lulav and sukkah? But that's the Rebbe's conclusion elsewhere, that shaking lulav in the sukkah, according to the Alter Rebbe, in accordance with his language, mitzvah min hamufchar, it's an actual better mitzvah. Yeah, The lulav is more of a lulav when it's inside the sukkah, whatever the reason is, as discussed there. Let's compare that. Let's contrast that with another value. There's a concept in general by all mitzvahs. The reason makdim in the mitzvahs. If you're a diligent, if you're a laceratus Jew, you always do the mitzvah first, and therefore there's a concept to do the lulav first thing in the morning. But that is clearly not a lulav related mitzvah. That's a person related hidur. Because it's not true only about lulav. It's true about any morning mitzvah. You should try to do it right away. You are showing that you have simcha, you have chayis, that you have zrizis, that you are a laceratus, you love the mitzvah. It makes you a better lulav shaker. It doesn't make the lulav mitzvah a better mitzvah. And therefore, when these two values that are highlighted on the screen now are in conflict, because let's say I wake up in the morning, I want to shake my lulav first thing, but I have a very shabby one, a basic one. And I know that if I wait an hour or 2 or 3, someone else is going to come and bring me a beautiful one. Should I wait or should I not? I'm sorry, I jumped to the line 2. Apologize. I could do the mitzvah first thing in the morning, but I won't be able to do it inside the sukkah. Or I can wait and do it in the sukkah. The Alter Rebbe would say, do it in the sukkah. Wait. Compromise on the idea of doing it first thing and wait to get a nice lulav. Why? Because doing it the first thing is only an improvement in you, the observer of the mitzvah. Having a better lulav is actual improvement in the mitzvah itself. Same distinction would be with the concept of having a better lulav. I could do it early in the morning and I don't have such a good set, or I can wait and get a good set. The halacha would probably rule to wait, the way that Rebbe speaks in other sichas. Why? Because having a better set is an actual better mitzvah of lulav. Doing it early is a better performance of you, which is special. But it's not a hidur mitzvah in the mitzvah itself. It's not a mitzvah min hamufchar. It's just a hidur mitzvah. It's a beautification in your observance. And the other one is stronger. It's a stronger value. Another example, which is a big subject of debate between the Rebbe and others. Should you make the bris first thing in the morning, but you have a small crowd because everyone's running to work, or should you do it in the afternoon as long as before sunset, but you'll have a much bigger crowd? Which there's a concept, when you have a big crowd, you're bringing more joy and more honor to Hashem and to the mitzvah. What do? In full disclosure, most Jewish communities will do it first thing in the morning, regardless of the crowd. They'll have a tiny crowd, but it's got to be first thing in the morning. Abraham woke up first. He woke up in the morning. You're doing mitzvah early. You have to be a laceratus. Crowd, big or small? No. Rovam Hadras Melech. Yeah, but the alacrity trumps it. The Rebbe argues that by bris, the principle of having a big crowd is not just a sideshow. It's not just because you're supposed to honor Hashem with a big crowd by any mitzvah, but it's bris specific, more so than the other mitzvahs, because a big crowd brings joy. And bris and joy are synonymous. Like we say in the Megillah, Sasa and Zumila, the joy is associated with Mila. It's a mitzvah that we took with great joy, etc., etc. And therefore, having a large crowd at a bris, the Rebbe argues, as opposed to other mitzvahs, where a large crowd is just a nice performance of the mitzvah on the part of the person, the gavra. By a bris, having a large crowd is actually an improvement in the actual mitzvah of bris that you're doing it with joy. This is very novel and creative, and this is the Rebbe's opinion and the Rebbe's approach, and that's why in Chabad circles, we will actually prefer to make the bris, and it's revolutionary. I think it's unique. I don't know that any other Jewish communities do this. Prefer to make the bris later in the day, even in the evening, as long as it's before Shkia, before sunset, but you get a bigger crowd. Why is that overriding the other value of Zrizin Magdim and the mitzvahs of doing it first? Because the bris with joy that Rebbe maintains is actual betterment in the mitzvah. Whereas the concept of doing it early is a betterment of the performer of the mitzvah. I'm just giving examples. This is a little bit of a side, but is giving clarity in what the concept is. Another example is you're supposed to daven with kavanah. And then you're also supposed to daven standing up and facing Jerusalem. There's a concept that if these two are in conflict, let's say you're riding on a donkey or a horse and you're driving this is back in the day, in a dangerous place. Maybe it could apply today in some dangerous places. And you can't stop the donkey and get off and and face Jerusalem, or if you're or you can't get out and do it because it's dangerous people, or whatever the reason is why you can't, what do? And the principle is, and you won't be able to have kavanah because you're in a place of danger. The principle is, stay seated and daven seated. People daven the Amidah sometimes on a bus or in a car or an airplane where it's impossible to stand. They do it sitting down. Because if they stand up, they're not going to be able to focus, and they're going to be distracted and distracting others. And the kavanah will trump the idea of standing up and facing Jerusalem. And the reason is simple. Because standing up and facing Jerusalem are details in the mitzvah. They're not part of the mitzvah itself. If you look in the Rambam, the way he describes it, whereas davening b'kavanah is ikuva, the language is, it's an absolute must. If you daven without kavanah, you didn't daven. Obviously, this basic kavanah, at least you know you're talking to Hashem, and that's sufficient at the end of the day. But davening with kavanah is part of davening. That's what davening is. That's the davening. That's the mitzvah. It's the hefts of the mitzvah. If I'm davening without any focus, it's like I didn't daven. Then the fact that you should be standing and facing Jerusalem and there's other details, this is not part of the definition of davening. These are things that the Chachamim encourage, that you should show more respect as a person to the mitzvah. But they're not as critical. And therefore, the former would trump them. Okay, this is all just a side exercise for fun, but to show the clear difference between these two terms, mitzvah min hamufchor and mahadrin, is something, a beautification of a mitzvah that's actually elevating the mitzvah observance, or is it the mitzvah observance is the same, but you are showing more love and more alacrity? The observer is looking better. Now, says the Rebbe, let's approach it and let's apply this to Chanukah. We know that by Chanukah, that the mahadrin, how do we do it? That every day we add candles. It's a beautiful thing. Is this an actual better mitzvah, or is this a better observer? You are acting nicer to the mitzvah. Would you call it mitzvah min hamufchor, or would you call it mahadrin? There's no clarity on it. If you look at the Paiskim and the halachic decisors, the term alternates between one and the other. Some say mitzvah min hamufchor, some say mahadrin. So the Rebbe comes along with this novel concept, and the Rebbe says that will depend on our approach here. On our approach here. That will depend on these two approaches. If I hold approach A, that what? But the reason why you increase every day is because I'm going by the days. That means that the additional candle each day is Chanukah related. That means it's more of a mitzvah of Chanukah. But if you hold it, it has nothing to do with Chanukah. It's something that we learn either from Sukkah's action or from the general concept that you're supposed to always ascend in holiness. It's not related to Chanukah. That approach would go by the other way, that this is not actual better mitzvah. It's just a better performer. The person is doing a better job. The person is going up. But the mitzvah remains the same, the basic mitzvah. So this becomes the Rebbe's discussion now, and this is now a whole new thing. You see, on the prior screen, we were discussing halachic applications, differences between approach A and B. Now we're discussing a difference in a total perspective. It's very novel, and it's very creative, and it's very brilliant, I'm sure. The fact that Jewish custom and law became, you don't just go by the basic of lighting one candle a night, etc., but you keep increasing every night. Does that mean that you're doing more of the mitzvah of Chanukah? Or no, the mitzvah of Chanukah remains the same, the one candle, but the fact that you're increasing is because you are doing a better job, meaning to say you're showing diligence, you're showing simcha, you're a better mitzvah observer, but it's not a better mitzvah. And the Rebbe brings down that the commentaries already discussed, the Achreinim already discussed that there could be a difference between these two approaches. What happens if you got additional candles after you lit the basic candle? Let's say it's night 3, you only had one candle, and you made a bracha and you lit one candle. You did the mitzvah on the basic level, and then a little later somebody finds more candles. Should you make an additional bracha on the additional lighting of the other two candles? According to approach A, says the Rebbe, yes, you should. Why? Because the addition is actually the mitzvah. But according to approach B, this is not more the mitzvah of Chanukah candle. It's more the mitzvah of you being more Chanukah-like, more Jewish-like. But the mitzvah of Chanukah candle is the basic one candle which has been done already. Thank you very much. You can't make another bracha because you're not doing another mitzvah. You're just polishing up that mitzvah. So this becomes fascinating. It becomes interesting. There's actually halachic difference in whether or not you make a bracha, which is discussed already in commentary in Achreinim, whether or not you make a bracha. If you already lit the basic one candle and then subsequently you got additional candles, do you or do you not make a bracha on the extra candles? There's two approaches. And the Rebbe maintains that these two approaches can depend on the two Talmudic opinions, approach A and approach B. Why are you adding the candle? Either to count the days or because you're just in general adding in holiness. If you're counting the days, that means that the additional candle, it's more of the mitzvah. So make a bracha, you got more candles. It's like another mitzvah. If you're just ascending in holiness, it's not really more Chanukah. It's more you. You're being more Jewish. And therefore, you for sure would not make another bracha. The Rebbe points out in detail in the Sikha, and this will explain Rashi in the Gemara. On approach B, Rashi is very wordy. The Gemara says that approach B is that why do we have these opinions of going down or going up, either corresponding to the Sukkah's oxen or the concept that holiness should always ascend and never descend. So Rashi is very, very lengthy. And on the corresponding Sukkah's oxen, Rashi says that we learn out of the sacrifices in Parshas Pinchas. And with the holiness ascending and never descending, Rashi says this is something that's derived in the tractate of Menachos from verses. And the Rebbe is questioning Rashi's long language. You know, the Sukkah's oxen is a famous thing. You have to tell me that it's in Parshas Pinchas. I don't know where it is. I mean, it's basic information. And the holiness ascending and never descending, even if Rashi wants to say it's derived from a verse, he has to tell you the address that it's in tractate Menachos. The Rebbe in the footnotes says there's various approaches to this, but the Rebbe wants to suggest, in line with this thinking, that Rashi, with that lengthy wordiness, is trying to bring home the point that approach B is that the fact that we light different numbers of candles every night is not Chanukah related. It's just Judaism related. Proof is that's related to Parshas Pinchas. It's related to Tractate Menachos. It's completely not from Chanukah. So Rashi is deflecting its connection to Chanukah by saying this comes from Pinchas with the karbanos, with the sacrifice. This comes from a verse which is biblical, which is totally opposed to Chanukah, which is rabbinic, and is talking about the Tractate Menachos. It has nothing to do with Chanukah. It's just a general Jewish concept that in Yiddishkeit you should go up, or in Yiddishkeit there's a concept of the declining number of the oxen, which we're applying something from elsewhere to here, which that would lend itself, that Rashi would be of the approach. That approach B, Rashi is almost hinting to the Rebbe Sikha, that approach B means that this additional daily candle, decrease or increase, is not more of Chanukah mitzvah. It's just more of the the observer, of the person, because you're being more Jewish, because it's a general Jewish concept, as stated in Pinchas, as stated in Menachos. Whereas approach A, so that's how Rebbe explains Rashi's wordiness. Whereas approach A, it has to do with the numbers of the days, which means it's clearly Chanukah related. So the Rebbe now that the Rebbe brought this concept, that we have two ways to look at the actual concept of the new candles each day, of the increasing the candles. Is it more Chanukah lit? Is it more of a mitzvah? Or is it a better form of observance from your perspective as a person? But not really more of a Chanukah mitzvah. It's just that you're being a better Jew, let's call it. So the Rebbe says, now we're going to revisit halacha application number 3. Revisit it. We said earlier that if on night 3 I had only 2 candles, what do I do? So we said that according to the first approach, there's no point in lighting 2 candles because it's night 3. And this approach A is that you're doing it because you're counting the days. I'm going to light 2 candles on the 3rd night. I'm going to be misleading people, and I'm not going to match up to the days. There's no point. So light 1. Whereas, according to approach B, where on night 3 you have 2 candles, at least light 2. At least you will not be going down. That's how we ruled it in the prior part of the Sikha, which is logical. But now that we added this overlay, that perhaps approach A means that the increase each day is actual more mitzvah. Of course you have to light 2. If I have a chance to do the mitzvah good, or even more mitzvah, even though I can't do the best, I got to do at least whatever I could. This is not some nice thing on behalf of the person that he wants to show something or other. It's actually more mitzvah. You got to do the mitzvah to the optimum. You can't do the optimum. You do it whatever you could, the best level you could, because this is an actual betterment in the mitzvah of Chanukah. So then you would light 2. So here we would change it to 2. That even though it's night 3, and I only have 2 candles, so it's not going to match up with the days. True. But in this way of thinking in the Sikha, the days is only a symbol of the fact that now you have to show more miracle, you have to show more Chanukah. You can't show the right amount because you don't have enough. Show the most that you can. It's not a suggested improvement in your behavior to the mitzvah. It's more mitzvah. Very now. And the Rebbe comes up with another application based on this halachic application for what would happen if night 8, I got 6 candles. This is a new application. We didn't have it before in the Sikha. It's the 8th night. Let's assume till now I did everything right. Night 1, I lit 1. Night 2, I lit 2, etc., etc. Night 7, I did 7. I'm good. Night 8, I only got 6. I only have enough oil for 6. What should I do? Should I go back to 1 or should I light 6? So let's start with approach B. In approach B, clearly you should light 1. Night 7, you lit 7. Night 8, you only have 6. So what's the point in lighting 6? You're not accomplishing the ascent of holiness, and you're not accomplishing that you're not descending. You are descending. Yesterday you did 7, today you do 6. So you might as well revert back to the basic observance, which is 1. It's better. Because if you light 6, you're showing that, I'm descending. I'm trying, but I'm descending. I'm lighting 1, which means tonight I'm not able to do the mitzvah on its optimum level. I'm doing the basic mitzvah. I'm still Jewish. I'm still okay. But there's no value, absolute value in lighting more than 1, because either way, I am not ascending and I'm actually descending. So I might as well stick with the main mitzvah. That would be the ruling theoretically there. What about if I go according to approach A? That the reason that I should light every night another one because of counting the days. So again, before the Rebbe's novelty of this part of the Sikha, so therefore if it doesn't match the days, don't do it. So if on night 8 I only have 6 candles, I'm not going to write 6 candles. It's going to be misleading. It's supposed to match up with the days. It's night 8 and you're lighting 6? It's a mess. It means nothing. It doesn't match up with the days. That's how we would have learned the ruling the first half of the Sikha. But now in the second, what would we do? We'd go back to 1. Don't be misleading. Stick with the 1, and that's it. But according to the Rebbe's innovation here, that this approach A, the Rebbe wants to argue that this is an actual betterment in the mitzvah min hamufchar. It's a betterment in the mitzvah. You got to do the best you can. You can't do the best, do the second best, but don't revert back to the basic, because it's actual betterment in the mitzvah. And when it's actually about doing more mitzvah, you got to do the best you can. You can't do 8, do 6. the correspondence to the days is not the critical point, but that's just an indication of the fact that this is about the celebration of the actual mitzvah of Chanukah being done in its optimum way. And therefore, you got to do the absolute best that you can. Because this is not just a nice thing that you're being mahader, you're being a better Jew. You're doing a mitzvah and a mufkar. You're elevating the mitzvah, and the mitzvah should be elevated to your best possible way. And therefore, the ruling would change, and it would be that you do the 6. The Rebbe doesn't give a takeaway to the Sikha. But as usually happens in our community, when we learn the Sikha, people are pushing me, what's the takeaway? And, my reaction was that it shows you that every mitzvah it's emphasized that every mitzvah has the betterment of the mitzvah and the betterment of the Jew. There's both sides to it. The mitzvah is there to make the world holy, to elevate the objects, and it also refines the Yid in the process. And perhaps another thought is that the Rebbe wants us to know, which we do the mitzvah, every Jew today does the mitzvah, mahadrim and mahadrim. Chanukah, this is prevalent custom. Even a person who's not so religious the rest of the year, Chanukah, everybody goes up from 1 to 2 to 3 to 8. Nobody stays at 1. So I think perhaps maybe the Rebbe is celebrating the observance of Yidden on Chanukah. Because the Rebbe is very into the fact, look how Yidden do Chanukah. They don't do the basic. They don't do Mahadrin. They do Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin. They allow the Neshama to shine, which is a total dedication. And perhaps the Rebbe, by coming to this conclusion, that there is an approach in the Talmud, that betterment is an actual betterment in the mitzvah, that every Jew is doing more mitzvah, not just being a better Jew, but actually doing more mitzvah, which obviously would make the Rebbe very happy.